My name is Avery Blake, I'm 31, and last week HR sat me in a glass box in the middle of our open office and asked if I was sleeping with my boss. They called it a conversation about perception. I could see my team through the glass, pretending not to look, pretending not to care. On the table between us were printed Slack screenshots, a blurred photo from the hallway, and a report that suddenly made my performance look suspicious instead of good. My boss, Harper, barely met my eyes. HR asked their questions. Nobody asked the only one that mattered: who built this story and why? Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever dealt with a toxic boss, a jealous coworker, or a rumor that spread faster than the truth. I read every comment, and you'd be surprised how many office stories sound exactly like this. If any part of what I just said feels familiar, stay with me. Things were about to get much worse. I didn't walk into this company expecting trouble. When I first pushed through the glass doors 18 months ago, all I wanted was a clean slate. The building smelled like burnt coffee and carpet cleaner, the kind of place where ambition clings to the walls. My old firm had taught me how fast a rumor could ruin a career, how quickly hard work could be rewritten as manipulation in someone else's mouth. I promised myself I would stay invisible this time, work hard, keep my head down, earn my place quietly. On my first morning, HR handed me a badge with a photo where I looked more tired than employed. I found my desk in the open space, rows of white tables, identical chairs, fluorescent lights humming above like an interrogation room. People barely glanced up as I walked by. That was fine with me. Anonymity felt safe, predictable. Then I met Harper Quinn. It was during a client prep meeting my very first week. I expected a stiff handshake and a rehearsed introduction. Instead, Harper stepped into the conference room like someone who was born leading a room. Shoulders back, expression focused, voice sharp enough to make the conversation tighten. She didn't smile at first. She assessed. Not just me, everyone. She scanned the room like she knew who would be useful and who would fold under pressure. When she finally looked at me, really looked, it felt like she could read the career I was trying so hard to bury. "You're Avery, right?" she asked. I nodded, surprised she already knew my name. "I've heard good things," she added. "Let's see if they're true." Some people flirt with their eyes. Harper challenges her. We worked through the client deck, and I offered a few adjustments, minor structural changes, reframing objections. Things I thought were obvious, but at my old job, no one ever wanted to hear new ideas from someone without seniority. Harper heard them, weighed them, and then rewrote her entire pitch on the spot. Something shifted in the room when she did. Eli raised his eyebrows. Maya scribbled something in her notebook like she was filing it away for future gossip, and Harper gave me a nod I didn't know how to interpret. Approval? Respect? A test passed? Whatever it was, it changed everything. Our second real interaction wasn't in a boardroom. It was at 9:42 p.m. on a Wednesday, the kind of night where every other department had gone home, and the only light came from the computer monitors and the distant glow of the city outside. I stayed late because being alone in the office felt strangely peaceful, like the pressure dissolved once the crowd disappeared. Harper stayed late because, well, no one at my old company had ever cared whether I ate or collapsed from exhaustion. "Thank you," I said, and meant it. We sat at my desk, me in my swivel chair, her perched on the edge of the table like she didn't belong behind closed doors so much as above the entire floor. We talked numbers first, then strategy, then, because it was late and the world outside felt far away, we talked about everything else. "How long were you at your last company?" she asked. "Long enough," I said. "Good or bad?" "A mix," I replied, though that wasn't the truth. The truth was messy, painful, but the pieces started slipping out anyway. Someone spread a rumor once. Nothing happened physically, but my manager and I were close. Too close, apparently, for some people. I lost a promotion because my name was easier to ruin than hers. Harper's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "People love writing stories about other people's ambitions," she said, "especially if the target can't defend himself without looking guilty." I looked up at her. "Have you ever dealt with anything like that?" She hesitated, a rare crack in her otherwise controlled exterior. "At my last firm, people decided who I was before I ever opened my mouth," she said quietly. Then she shut the door on that vulnerability with a simple sip of her drink. That was the night I first sensed something between us. Nothing physical, nothing reckless, just something. A pull, a quiet understanding that neither of us wanted to name. But attraction isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence that gets you. A week later, it happened. The moment that should have been nothing but became everything. We were preparing for a major pitch, one that would determine whether our team hit its quarterly goal. I had rushed in with my tie crooked, my shirt half untucked from running downstairs for last-minute printouts. Harper looked at me, sighed in irritation, then stepped forward and fixed my tie herself. Her fingers brushed my collarbone, light, efficient, professional. But her breath was close. Too close. My pulse tripped over itself. "There," she said, stepping back as if the air between us had suddenly become dangerous. Her voice was steady. Mine wasn't. I spent the rest of the day wondering why that tiny moment made me feel like someone had opened a door I didn't remember unlocking. Then there was the holiday office party. Loud music, cheap wine, and coworkers performing versions of themselves they never showed at work. I stood by the bar, trying to blend in, when I felt someone watching me. Harper. Across the room, drink in hand, expression unreadable. Later, when the noise got unbearable, I stepped outside to breathe. She followed a minute later, standing beside me in the cold December air. We talked about nothing and everything. How exhausting expectations were, how hollow corporate celebrations felt, how the year had worn us down in different ways. If anyone else had walked out and seen us there, alone, quiet, too close, it would have looked like something. Maybe it already was. What I didn't know then was that someone did see us, and she would use that moment as the first brick in a story she planned to build. Blair Dawson joined 3 weeks later. Blair arrived on a Monday, the kind of Monday where everyone looked half awake and clung to their coffee like life support. She walked in wearing a cream blazer and a smile too bright for the fluorescent lighting, the type of smile that said she already understood exactly how to charm an entire department. During her introduction, she talked fast, laughed easily, and made sure to compliment 3 people in the first 5 minutes. She took the desk diagonally across from mine, and within an hour, she already knew everyone's names, favorite snacks, and where they fell on the unspoken office hierarchy. Some people earn influence, others collect it like souvenirs. Blair was the second type. At first, she didn't pay much attention to me. Her eyes were on Harper. No surprise, given Harper's reputation in the industry. During stand-ups, Blair mirrored Harper's posture, her cadence, even her tone. In the break room, she found excuses to ask Harper questions about strategy, leadership, and the industry. She dropped compliments with surgical accuracy. "You're the kind of woman I want to be in 5 years," she told Harper once, loud enough for everyone to hear. Harper smiled politely but kept her distance. I noticed Blair noticing that. The first time Blair truly acknowledged me was during a late afternoon lull. She walked over carrying a folder she didn't actually need. "So," she said, leaning on my desk, "you're Avery." I nodded. "And you're the golden boy." I felt my stomach clench. That phrase again. I'd heard it at my last company, too. Always said with a smile sharp enough to cut. "I'm just good at my job," I said. Blair tilted her head. "Of course. That's what everyone says." She walked away before I could respond, as if she had taken my measure and filed the information away for later use. The shift was subtle at first. A lingering glance whenever Harper spoke to me, a raised eyebrow when Harper praised my work, a smirk whenever Harper asked me to stay after meetings to review numbers. None of it was overt, but all of it was deliberate. Then came Q4. Corporate announced the incentive trip to Mexico for the top seller, and the entire office transformed overnight. People who barely spoke to one another suddenly compared numbers, tracked each other's calls, and refreshed the leaderboard like it was oxygen. Harper pulled me aside after the announcement. "You're positioned well," she said. "I want to win," I admitted. "You can," she replied, her voice lower, softer. "And you should." Something flickered between us then, something neither of us named. But we both felt it. Blair felt it too. She started hovering closer during meetings, volunteering for any project Harper touched, offering to take over tasks I'd already been assigned. She kept her tone sweet but territorial, like she was subtly marking space. One afternoon, just before a big client call, she placed 2 coffees on Harper's desk, one for Harper, one extra that she offered with an innocent smile. Harper declined. Blair pretended not to notice the tension. I noticed everything. But the first real warning sign came on a Thursday evening. I stayed late again to finish proposals. Harper was still in her office, her door slightly ajar. When I dropped off a printed deck, she waved me in. "You've been carrying the weight of this quarter," she said. "Sit for a minute." I did. She poured 2 small glasses of bourbon from a bottle she kept for end-of-quarter victories. We talked about numbers, but the conversation drifted the way it always did with her, toward fears, choices, regrets. She talked about her fiancé, how the breakup blindsided her. "He said I cared more about work than about us," she said. "Did you?" She shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe he just didn't like the version of me that's ambitious." There was a silence after that, a soft, fragile one. Then she looked at me in a way that made time feel suddenly slower. "Avery," she said, her voice lower. "You know, people misunderstand things when a director and a senior rep work this closely. If anything ever happened, anything real, it would erase everything you've earned." I swallowed hard. "Is that your way of saying nothing can happen between us?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she met my eyes with terrifying honesty. "It's my way of saying I haven't decided what I'm willing to lose." Before I could respond, the door handle shifted. The door opened. Blair froze in the doorway, eyes darting from the bourbon glasses to our distance on the couch. "Oh," she said. "I didn't realize you were in a meeting." She closed the door slowly, the way someone closes a trap they've been waiting for spring. The next morning, something in the office felt different, charged, watching, hungry. When I reached my desk, Maya was already whispering to Eli. A few heads lifted just to look at me, then looked away too quickly. Then HR sent out the email. Mandatory refresher training, professional boundaries, leadership conduct. No one said it was about Harper. No one said it was about me. They didn't have to. Blair walked past my desk, her smile too small to be friendly, too satisfied to be innocent. That was the day I realized the story of my life here wasn't being written by me at all. It was being written by someone who knew exactly how to weaponize perception, someone who had already started. If the flashback explains how the edges of my life started to blur, then Q4 was when everything sharpened into a blade, and Blair was the one holding it. The morning after HR's boundary email, people looked at me differently. Not openly, this wasn't high school, but in that corporate way where every expression is polite, but every glance is an interrogation. Someone had clearly planted a story overnight, and it had already taken root. When I walked into the kitchenette to make coffee, the room went quiet in a way that only happens when someone has been talking about you. Maya cleared her throat and pretended to scroll her phone. Eli gave me a tight smile, the kind people offer right before delivering bad news. He waited until we were alone before speaking. "Just watch your back," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because people love shortcuts, and you being close to Harper gives them an easy explanation for why you're ahead." I opened my mouth to respond, but he added, And some people want that explanation to be true. It makes their failure easier to swallow. He wouldn't say who some people were, but I already knew. The first real strike happened on Slack. In a semi-private channel, one for team motivation, of all things, a cropped screenshot appeared. My name, Harper's name. Her message, "We should talk after hours." No context, no timestamp, no thread. Just that line. Someone had trimmed everything else away. The part where we discussed a massive deal collapsing. The part where she asked if I could jump on a late call with legal. The part where nothing inappropriate was said, implied, or even considered. A few people reacted with emojis, wide eyes, little flames, the kind meant to look playful but feel invasive. No one tagged me, but the damage didn't require tagging. I confronted Blair that afternoon. "Do you know who posted that?" I asked. She widened her eyes like I'd accused her of murder. "Oh my God," she said, hand to chest. "You think I had something to do with it?" "Did you?" "Of course not," she said. "But, I mean, these things happen when boundaries get blurry, Avery. People talk. You can't control that." She smiled sympathetically, which somehow felt worse than open hostility. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. The second strike arrived the next morning. A small box sat neatly on my desk, sleek black packaging with a silver ribbon. No card. Inside was a luxury coffee blend I couldn't afford even on sale. I didn't think much of it until Blair appeared behind me, voice pitched loud enough for half the floor to hear. "Ooh," she said. "A gift? From who?" "I don't know," I said. "There's no name." She leaned closer to the box, inhaling theatrically. "Fancy, and very personal." Then she looked at Harper's office. Then she looked at me. Then she raised her eyebrows as if she'd solved something. Within 30 minutes, 3 people asked me how my morning surprise was. By noon, someone joked that Harper had good taste. By 3, the coffee was no longer a gift, it was evidence, proof, another thread woven into a narrative someone wanted to be true. That night, when I researched the brand, I learned the truth. It wasn't from Harper at all. It was from a corporate client I'd closed earlier in the month. Completely innocent, completely misinterpreted. But a rumor doesn't need truth, it just needs timing. The third strike came during a team meeting. We were reviewing quarterly progress when Harper assigned me a new high-visibility account, one we desperately needed to get ahead of the rival team. Before I could even nod, Blair spoke up. "Actually," she said lightly, "maybe someone else should take this one, just to balance things out." Silence fell. Everyone knew exactly what she was implying, but she phrased it with just enough polish to stay undeniable. Harper stiffened. "Avery is the best fit for this client." "Of course," Blair replied sweetly. "I'm just thinking about optics." Optics. The word landed like a slap. Harper dismissed her comment, but something in her posture changed, coiled, restrained. I saw fear flash in her eyes. Not fear of Blair, fear of how far the rumor had already spread. Later that afternoon, Harper called me into her office. She closed the blinds, something she'd never done before. "We have a problem," she said. "I know," I replied. She shook her head. "Not the rumor, the reaction. HR wants us to reduce one-on-one time temporarily." I felt heat rise in my chest. "So you're pulling away?" "I'm trying to protect you," she said. "They're watching everything right now." She didn't touch me, didn't move closer, didn't break any rule, but the emotional distance in her voice felt like a punishment I hadn't earned. A few days later, I saw her at a bar after work. Blair was with her, laughing, holding a drink, touching Harper's arm like she'd earned the right. Nothing about it was explicitly romantic, but that wasn't the point. The point was the way Blair looked at me over Harper's shoulder, triumphant, territorial. Eli's words came back to me. "She likes power. Everyone does." The fourth strike came wrapped in professionalism and delivered with a knife's precision. HR scheduled another check-in. Danielle greeted me with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're concerned about perception," she said. "Some employees feel uncomfortable with the dynamic between you and your manager." I asked who. She said she couldn't disclose names. I asked what evidence. She gestured toward a printed email, an email that appeared to come from Harper, suggesting she'd given me special treatment. Only it wasn't her writing style, wasn't her phrasing, wasn't her. It was a forgery. I knew it instantly. But HR didn't. When I left her office, the buzzing in my ears felt deafening. This wasn't gossip anymore. Someone was constructing a case, and if they were willing to fake emails, they weren't going to stop. After the forged email, something inside me shifted. Fear didn't disappear. It calcified, became sharp, became something I could hold. But the office didn't slow down to let me process it. It sped up, like it sensed weakness and wanted to devour it. The fifth strike came quietly, an email chain forwarded to the entire team. A weekly KPI summary. Normally I skimmed these, but this time my stomach dropped. My numbers were wrong. Not drastically, not enough for someone to call out immediately, but enough to make me appear average instead of top tier. Enough to make Blair look like she was gaining on me. I marched to Harper's office, forgetting HR's warning about boundaries. She glanced up, instinctively pleased to see me, then instantly guarded, remembering who might be watching. "My numbers," I said, placing my laptop in front of her. "They're altered." She reviewed them, brows furrowing. "This doesn't match the internal dashboard." I checked the logs. Someone modified the sheet before the email went out. Her jaw tightened. "Who has edit access?" We both knew the answer. She didn't say it. Neither did I. That was the thing about corporate warfare. No one ever names the enemy out loud. Before she could respond, a shadow appeared in the doorway. Blair. "Oh," she said, hand over her chest. "I didn't realize you two were one-on-one." Harper's posture snapped straight. "We're done," she said quickly, even though we weren't. Avery was just leaving. I left, because staying would have made everything worse. Blair stepped aside. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes sharpened. Another strike. The sixth hit at lunch the next day. I walked into the break room with my sad microwave leftovers, ready to eat quickly and alone, when I heard my name. "I mean, it's obvious," Maya whispered to Eli. "No one gets assignments like that unless something else is going on." "But HR would step in," Eli said, "right?" "Please," Maya scoffed. "HR only cares if it becomes a liability." They didn't see me, not until I grabbed a water bottle and closed the fridge harder than necessary. Maya jolted, guilt flashing across her face. Eli muttered my name like an apology he didn't know how to offer. I walked out without saying a word. But that was the moment the humiliation started to stick to me like smoke. I smelled it everywhere. And then, things escalated from malicious to strategic. A new meeting invite appeared on my calendar, a leadership sync I'd never been part of before. Confused, I joined the call. 5 minutes in, I realized what had happened. I'd been added accidentally. The topic? Managing inappropriate workplace relationships. People spoke like they were discussing weather patterns, calm and detached, but every time someone said power imbalance or favoritism, I felt a punch to the ribs. Someone snickered in the background. Maya again. I turned off my camera, sick. After the call, Harper messaged me directly. "Avery, I'm so sorry. I didn't approve of that invitation." I typed, "It's fine." Deleted it. Typed, "Did you remove me?" Deleted that too. Finally typed, "Thanks for letting me know." She saw the lie. I could feel it. But she didn't push. She couldn't. Not while HR was watching her every move. The seventh strike came later that week. A Friday. Always a Friday. People love chaos when they can leave for the weekend afterward. At 4:17 p.m., Blair walked over to my desk. She rested one manicured hand on the divider. "You know," she said softly, "I think you misunderstand how offices work." I didn't respond. She continued, her voice honey-sweet. People don't need proof to believe something. They just need a story that feels true. I finally looked up. And what story is that? She smiled. The one everyone's already telling. Before I could reply, Harper exited a conference room nearby. Blair saw her and immediately stepped back, switching into professional mode with terrifying speed. "Harper, quick question about the client deck," she chirped, suddenly cheerful, suddenly harmless. Harper paused mid-stride, but her eyes flicked to me first. Concern, regret, guilt, a mixture of every emotion she didn't have permission to show anymore. But she followed Blair. Of course she did. The optics demanded it. The eighth strike hit like a hammer. HR requested copies of all Slack conversations between me and Harper for standard review. Danielle delivered the request with bureaucratic detachment, but she couldn't hide the underlying assumption. Assumption, guilt. Assumption, impropriety. Assumption, we had something to hide. I went home early that night, not because I wanted to, but because staying would have felt like begging the walls to stop closing in. As I rode the elevator down, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Check the shared drive. No name, no context, but a link. Against my better judgment, I opened it. There it was. A recording file. Security footage. Hallway camera. Time-stamped to the night Blair walked in on Harper and me. The clip played. Blair approaches Harper's office, pausing, leaning toward the door like she was trying to listen, then slowly, deliberately, turning the handle. She wasn't accidentally interrupting. She was staging a discovery. My heart pounded as the realization settled. Someone had given me the first real proof. Someone who either wanted justice or wanted corporate blood. It didn't matter. It was the first piece of truth in a sea of lies. But truth alone wouldn't save me. Not yet. Not until I understood who sent it. Not until I knew every move my enemy had made. Not until I was ready to turn all of this back on them. For the first time since the rumors started, I felt something other than anger. I felt direction, and I knew the escalation wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, because corporate America loves ruining your life before lunch. The subject line read, Sales Division Performance and Conduct Review. No one said my name, but everybody knew who the review was about. When I stepped into the conference room, the air felt too cold, too still, like the vents were pumping in tension instead of oxygen. Glass walls on all sides, a long table, a projector humming in the corner, every chair filled, the entire sales team, upper management, HR, even a regional VP dialing in from another office. And Harper, sitting at the far end of the table, posture perfect, expression unreadable. She didn't look at me, but I saw the tightness in her jaw, the fear she was trying to hide. Blair sat near the middle, close enough to influence the energy, but far enough away to look innocent. She tapped a pen against her notebook with a rhythm too steady, too self-assured. She was waiting for the kill. Danielle opened the meeting. Thank you all for joining. We've received several concerns regarding performance integrity, data accuracy, and potential boundary issues within leadership relationships. You could feel the shift. Every head angled slightly toward me, pretending not to. She clicked the remote. The projector lit up with the cropped Slack screenshot. The message Harper sent me about talking after hours. No context, no thread, just the damning line floating on a white background like a confession. This suggests communication outside work hours that could create the appearance of an inappropriate dynamic, Danielle said. My pulse was hammered. I kept my face still. Next slide, the anonymous gift, the ribboned box, photographed from my desk. This raised concerns about personal exchange of gifts. Someone murmured, "Wow," under their breath. Next slide, the altered KPIs. We also found discrepancies between this version and the internal dashboard. Every eye flicked to me again, and again, I kept my mouth shut, because I had learned something very important. Silence is terrifying when everyone expects you to break. Finally, Danielle displayed the forged email, the message implying Harper gave me special opportunities. Harper inhaled sharply, quiet but audible, the first crack in her composure. "We have reason to believe this email may not be authentic," Danielle said carefully, "but its existence has escalated concerns." Then she turned to Harper. "Would you like to make a statement?" Harper swallowed. When she stood, she looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Not weak, just tired, exhausted from carrying a burden she didn't deserve. "I want to make it clear," she said, voice steady but strained, "that any decisions I've made regarding Avery's assignments were based on his performance alone. But if my communication style was created misinterpretations, then that is my responsibility." A murmur rippled through the room. To them, it sounded like an admission. To me, it sounded like she was sacrificing herself to protect me. Danielle nodded. "Thank you. Avery, do you have anything to add?" I stood slowly, letting the silence stretch until the air felt tight. My hands were steady, not because I wasn't scared, but because the fear had finally crystallized into purpose. "Yes," I said, "I do." Blair smirked. She thought this was the moment I would collapse. I clicked the projector remote before anyone could stop me. New slide. A side-by-side comparison. The original KPI report and the altered one. Highlighted discrepancies, timestamps, edit history showing who accessed the file. A quiet gasp broke from someone near the back. "These changes weren't accidents," I said. "Someone edited this sheet before it was sent out." Danielle frowned. "Who?" I clicked again. Next slide. Hallway camera footage. Blair leaning into Harper's office door the night she accidentally interrupted us. The clip showed her listening, testing the handle, setting the scene. Whispers detonated around the room. I turned to Lucas, the intern. He shrank slightly but nodded when I asked, "Would you repeat what you told me?" His voice shook. I saw Blair screenshot Slack conversations. She said people needed to see what was really going on. I didn't know what she meant. "I'm sorry." Blair's face was drained of color. He's misremembering. This is ridiculous." But the room wasn't listening to her anymore. I clicked one final time. The fake email. Metadata visible. IP address pointing to a workstation that wasn't Harper's, wasn't mine, wasn't any manager's. It was Blair's. Silence fell so heavy it felt physical. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, almost cold. For months, someone built a narrative to undermine my performance and damage Harper's career. I didn't understand why at first, but now I do. I looked directly at Blair. Some people don't want to earn success. They want to inherit the ruins of whoever they destroy. No one breathed. Danielle cleared her throat, stunned. I need to pause this meeting, now." But the damage was already done. The truth was out, and for the first time, Blair was the one drowning in perception. As I stepped back from the projector, Harper finally looked at me. Not with fear, with relief. And something else, something that felt dangerously close to gratitude. The glass walls of the conference room reflected all of them staring at me. For the first time since this began, I didn't look away. The meeting ended in a way corporate disasters always do, too fast, too quietly, and without anyone giving you the satisfaction of clear answers. Danielle announced a temporary pause for internal review. The VP signed off with a pinched expression, and everyone filed out of the glass room, pretending they hadn't just watched a public unmasking. Blair left first, or tried to. 2 HR staff intercepted her before she reached the elevators. They spoke in low voices, guiding her toward a smaller conference room down the hall, the kind used for terminations or interrogations, depending on the company. She didn't look at me as she passed, but the panic in her eyes was unmistakable. Funny. A few minutes earlier, she'd been tapping a pen like she owned the floor. Now she looked like someone realizing the ground beneath her wasn't solid at all. Harper stayed behind, gathering her notes with hands that weren't quite steady. For a moment, it was just the two of us among the empty chairs and abandoned coffee cups. She exhaled, long, shaky, and looked up at me like she wasn't sure whether to thank me or apologize. "Avery," she said softly, "you didn't have to do that." I met her eyes. Yes, I did. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "We still need to talk," she said, "but not here." She was right. This office had swallowed too much truth already. As she walked away, I remained in the room, letting the silence settle. The projector hummed beside me, its last slide frozen on the screen. Metadata, timestamps, digital fingerprints, proof of what had really happened. What no one in that room realized was that I hadn't revealed everything, not even close. On my personal drive were full Slack exports, email chains Blair never thought anyone would recover, logs showing every file she accessed during those late nights she claimed to be catching up. Even a second camera angle, one she didn't know existed, showing her entering Harper's office after we'd left, planting the illusion she would later discover. They thought today was about clearing my name. It wasn't. It was the beginning of leverage. People like Blair don't operate alone. Someone helped her, or benefited from her success. And now that I had their fingerprints, I could decide what to do with them. I left the conference room slowly, my reflection following me in the glass. I no longer looked like someone fighting to survive. I looked like someone preparing for a different kind of battle. They thought they'd buried me. All they did was hand me the shovel, and forget that I know exactly where they're standing. If you've ever felt like an outsider at your own job, you know exactly how fast a rumor can become a weapon. Before you go, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Offices look clean from the outside, but behind every promotion, every whispered conversation, every glass-walled meeting room, there's a story just like mine. Someone being pushed, cornered, underestimated. Share this with anyone trapped in a toxic workplace, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were in my place. I read everything. Your story might be the next one I tell.